Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and the rubber market. We are deep into the rubber market right now. That is one of our favorite commodities. Going to get into all of that and more. I'm your host, Beechek. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary. And we cannot wait to get into everything that's been going on in the market. But just a reminder before we do that, as always, everything that we say is not financial advice. We do not know anything for sure. Please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, how are you doing this Thursday, the 25th of January?
GM, my mic is doing weird things. Is it working? Am I sounding fine?
I think so.
Good.
Get some thumbs up in the audience if it sounds okay. I think that's fine. It was better than when you started this morning, I think.
It's doing very, very weird things. It keeps connecting and disconnecting. Anyhow, doing quite well. A bit on the tired side today, but there is no rest in the bull market. So very excited to talk about today's show. I do like that we have a bit more of technical stuff to talk about with one of the pieces of news. Not going to spoil that just now. Yeah, doing quite well.
Good. That is good. It's good that we have some technical stuff for you to talk about, not we. That's what you are going to cover. Happy that you're here to do that. You said that you're a little bit tired. I'm a little bit tired too. It's funny, we get to like Wednesday at the moment and we're already breaking down what's going on in Legendary's world that means that you're feeling a little bit worn down at the moment.
Way too many things at the same time. But yeah,
yes,
I feel like
the
lot of work
we can disclose.
A lot of work with the show, a couple of cool announcements to come, a bit of kind of losing track of basically my content creation is legendary, which is something that recently has been suffering, quite frankly. And I don't know, I feel like if you work at 3 to 4 things at the same time and you have the market activity, you can't just stay on top of that all. And I struggle with that at the moment.
Yes, I agree. Doing 3 or 4 things at the same time is very, very difficult. I've said this before, like on reflection about how other people go about creating media. The reason why it's so difficult in this space to do media really, really well is because in order to do well at anything, in my opinion, you need to sacrifice something. And there's very few people in this space that are able to sacrifice the market. Like if coins are going up very aggressively, if NFTs are going up very aggressively, and I don't think this is actually, to be fair, this is not just about media. This is about product builders, people in crypto creating protocols. Like, of course, they're going to get wildly distracted if ETH goes up 50% in a 6-month period. Like, you start doing the numbers, you start running the things through the calculator, and it gets distracting. If Solana meme coin season is going to completely take off, or if Rubber, some new generative art thing on Solana launches and does a 60x overnight and you don't see that, then that's not going to make you happy when you wake up in the morning. So I think there's a little bit of that. It's just very hard to sacrifice for the bigger picture when you have this constant chart in the background. What do you think about that, Legendary? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a very fair assessment. And I think at the end of the day, you need to realize what your goal is. And if it is to maximize your trading activity, if it is to build something sustainable, whether it's a company or show, whatever that is, I think you have to focus on that one goal. And as part of that, you will have to sacrifice other things.
Yes. But, and yet the funny thing about it is that if you don't participate, then you can sometimes be a worse producer of content or a worse, participant in the market in building a product, because if you don't participate, you lose touch with what's actually happening and you become less able to comment if you're not actually in the mix of things. So there's that balance to strike between not participating and concentrating on what you need to do, and participating so that you're a proper authority figure because you've got the experience and then still being able to do your other stuff at the same time. I think that's something we all struggle with and try to strike that balance. Tiro, welcome to the stage with us again. Love to see you back with us. What are your thoughts on this early stage discussion we're having?
Morning, gentlemen. Happy to hear your such dapper voices on this early morning and on the East Coast in the USA. Jack, love to see you jumping on here. Legendary and B-Check. Happy to be a part of it. I was looking at Rubber. I saw it was ripping. Didn't know what it was. Just brought it up on Tensor here, and looks like it's a generative art. Looks like the floor is at 17.54 or 45 SOL. The issue I have with it is only 1,000 pieces. Very easy to manipulate the market if it's and of a small amount of holders. And the instant sell right now is only 13. So it's a large gap there over SOL. So it's very dangerous at this point in time to buy a floor. If you want to try to get out of it quickly, you're sacrificing over 4 SOL at this time. That's like almost $400. That's a significant amount of money. So, you know.
Absolutely. Very, very good point to make. We're going to get into that all and more, Tiro, in just a sec. We're going to dive in a lot more there. What we're going to do first is hit the headlines, get some price action, get all of the updates, and then we're going to dive into that a lot more, Tiro, because yeah, that was a big, big cook. Nice details to be able to pull out from that. So let's get into it, starting with the price action from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. As always, if you do find it valuable, please do give it a like. It's got the price action, it's got the headlines, it's got all the information you need to know from the last 24 hours. Let's do it. Starting with crypto, we have Bitcoin at 40.1K, which is flat. ETH at 2.2K, flat. Solana, $88, kind of flat as well. Ape at 1.3. NFT volume on ETH was at 9.4. Solana 7.4. Bitcoin at 7.6. Getting into the headlines, Solana generative art Rubber 50x's. Well, this was 50x when I wrote this. It minted at 0.25 SOL. It ran up to 13 SOL. When I wrote it, it's now up to 17, as Tiro said. So I don't know what that multiple is right now, but it's more than 50. Going to get into those details in just a moment. Number 2, Solana unlocks new use cases like better stablecoins, superior game assets, and RWA governance via token extensions. Legendary is going to touch on that in just a little bit too. And finally, the SEC delays the spot Ether ETF decision on March the 10th. To March the 10th. Very important distinction. Jay Safe, who's been commenting quite a lot on the Bitcoin ETF stuff, said the spot Ethereum ETF delays will continue to happen sporadically over the next few months. The next date that matters is May the 23rd. We just want to touch on a little bit the implications of these types of delays. Getting into the top sales, we have CryptoPunk Purple Cap selling for 89 ETH. That's a VR one as well. That's almost $200,000. A CryptoPunk Pigtail selling for 69 ETH. That's 154,000. In terms of the floor prices, we've got CryptoPunks at 63.4, Bored Apes at 25.9, Mutants at 4.5, DGods at 3.1, Captains at 4.8, Azukis at 7.3. Penguins up a couple of percent at 18.6. Moonbirds at 1.1. Noun's winning bid was at 8 ETH this morning. Legendary, that is the price action. Those are the headlines. Before we get into the Solana Rubber conversation, any other numbers catching your eye? Everything seems kind of flat at the moment, actually.
Yeah, everything does seem flat. The numbers that catch my eye, I would say, is on the one hand, the CryptoPunk with the VR glasses. You know, I still have my VR glasses thesis based on the Apple Vision Pro that this will be the ultimate trade to have for a CryptoPunk. Once Apple Vision Pro will take off, I'm gonna keep sticking with that. Probably another thing that is sticking out, it's not so much a number, but more so a mint, is exactly right after our show when we will end the Play Ember mint, which is quite anticipated in the gaming world and is happening exactly in 45 minutes from now.
That is a very, very good point. I missed that one. What do you think is going to happen with the Play Ember mint? Remember, the gaming NFT mints have just been going absolutely crazy at the start of the year. You had Overworld, which might have been in January or might have been December now, I can't remember, which minted at 0.15, went as high as more than 2 ETH. We've had Farcana, which was a cheap-ish mint going much higher. Dino something from Exterior Games as well, starting low, going much higher. What's the price point for Play Ember? Where do you think it could go?
I mean, they have the mint party spaces right now at the same time. They have about 700 people live in that. If you look at their socials, they're doing pretty well. There's been so much demand for MB list. At the end of the day, it's 2.75k as a supply, but only 2.5k of that is mintable, as 250 will be reserved for their own treasury as a free mint. So I do think it will shoot up quite significantly after mint. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets to the like 1 ETH range, to be honest.
Interesting. And I think one of the key distinctions we want to draw today, or one of the key things I've been thinking about, is the difference between how so many of the mints have been taking place, where if you feel like if you're not in already via a whitelist or a pre-sale spot or something, some type of allocation, you basically feel like you're out. You're like, okay, well, I haven't got my spot, so I'm out. And it hasn't felt like there's been much opportunity for a while to actually participate like live. And I think that's one of the cool things as we move into the Rubber conversation, or just before we move into the Rubber conversation. What do you like? Is that a fair assessment, that a fair feeling that I've been feeling, Legendary, that it's so much has been whitelisted or gated in some way? And so maybe some people who had traditionally traded a lot might miss this type of thing because there aren't actually that many opportunities to like mint something live, which is open to the public, and then everyone can get in that way. Like, is that just me, or is that something you felt as well?
No, that's perfectly accurate, and especially now with those multi-tiered whitelists where you have just a bunch of guaranteed mints, and then you often have over-allocated whitelists that are generously being handed out to like cabals, communities, alpha discords, whatever. And then there's even competition amongst the whitelist mint. And if anything, then there's like a very small public supply, which we in many cases haven't seen, that just is there to have a little gas war and pump up the prices further. So it is a bit of a structure that some of the gaming creators, some of the Discord owners have expressed a bit of frustration with, that it's just not fun if all those spots that they're allocating are essentially first come, first served. So it is definitely a different minting dynamic, if we put it like this, that we're seeing in at least in the gaming space, which is the one which I'm tracking the most, certainly.
Absolutely. Okay, makes sense. So probably dwell a little bit more on that as we continue forward. Let's get into the Rubber conversation a little bit more. I wanted to think of like a nice memeable title. I said 50x for Rubber Solana NFT. I feel like there's something there, some kind of wordplay to have created a funny title, but I failed in that respect. If you do think of a funny title, put it in the comments. We want to change something. There's got to be something, right? Like things called Rubber 50x. I don't know. I feel like there's something there. But before we get into that conversation, we just want to say we are delighted to shout out today's sponsor, which is Gondi, the premier NFT lending protocol where smart lenders can refinance NFT loans and smart borrowers can get steady rates against their best NFTs. Buy now, pay later, and eradicate potential liquidations with the sell and repay feature. Gondi is advised and trusted by legendary collectors Seed Phrase and G-Funk, and I'm an ambassador for them too. We're going to give you a breakdown of one of their market-leading features a little later in the show, so stay tuned for that. Let's get into it, Legendary. Rubber was a collection which minted out yesterday. It was at 0.25 Sol. There's a 1,000 supply. It ran to as high as 22, I understand, at one point overnight, dipped down to 13 Sol. It then has moved back up to 17 since the time I wrote the snapshot and now. What are your thoughts? What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, at 17.3-ish Sol, where we've seen the last sale, that's a 69x on mint, which is, there's some beauty in that number. I've seen the narrative that started to form on the timeline. Many people like to already call it the Fidenza of Solana. I mean, edition size checks out for that. I find it quite interesting because art hasn't really been the strong suit on Solana. You had even art platforms that had to shut down because it didn't work out in the end. So personally, I do like it quite a lot that we see like Gen Art trending as a collection on Solana, but I'm also surprised to see that happening.
Why would you be surprised to see it happen?
For that reason, that we really haven't seen art take off to that extent on Solana before. It was like always art is something that lives on Ethereum, mostly on mainnet. Yes, there've been exploration on other chain as well, but this is where basically the quality accrues, and a 69x, 70x, whatever, is overnight for a Gen Art collection. Yes, it is a small edition size. There's quote unquote only 1K. Is super impressive.
Okay, I'm not trying to FUD anyone's bags here, but we're looking at this live on YouTube, scrolling through. Is this giving you a headache, Legendary?
The only headache it's giving me is that I don't have one, to be honest. Looking at it doesn't give me a headache.
They're kind of look, I think they're really cool, but just seeing them all next to each other are kind of overwhelming me for some reason. Look, I think they're pretty cool. You mentioned some interesting points about there. I also know that Kusho was involved. I think maybe it was up while it was minting. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, Kusho, in second, and Tiro as well. You were kind of speaking to it a little bit. Maybe we could come to you in a moment too. Maybe Kusho first. What are your thoughts on the Rubber collection? I know you were in a conversation as it was minting yesterday, or maybe just before. What's the lowdown from your perspective?
GM, please don't add salt to my injury. I'm in a lot of pain right now. My heart is kind of torn from my chest. I'm feeling a little bit of heartache and a few more other things. Mostly because I was in a conversation with Confusion. I think they were literally minting at that moment when we were having this conversation, and he was like, "Oh, this is what happened. This is how it played out. We were on the space, which is the space that we regularly host, not financial advice, and it's usually just a chilling space. Me, him, Abe, and last time we had Mousy on, and we were just gisting, we were just talking, and I brought up the issue of generative art on Bitcoin is popping. This is where the real alpha is. I think it's mostly undervalued right now, the art narrative in particular, and he was about to go off on a tangent and be like, I'm minting this Rubber's generative art collection on Solana, and then Twitter rogged him. And then he rogged, like, so bad, like, he couldn't join the space after that. So we're like, nah, never mind, we're just going to host this space next week. And then we canceled the space, and then we rogged it. And then I woke up, and I'm like, Mousy is like, Confusion's thing just did 50x. And I'm like, what is what? And then I saw it on your snapshot, and I was like, wait, do you know how big of a deal it is for it to show up on the snapshot? That means it is significant. And I'm like, and I'm like losing my mind because he literally brought it up one moment before I was about to shut down and go to bed, because I was like, you know what, I don't really have electricity right now. I'm going to go to bed and prepare for tomorrow. And then I thought about it, like, I should mint this, but the whole process, is still late. I said, no, I kind of just postponed that fate, and now my heart is in pain, bro.
Look, man, this is one of the cardinal sins in NFTs. It seems like, I think there was someone else in the comments as well, Omri, who's a friend here, a CryptoPunk holder and a lawyer in London. The exact same thing as you just said. It's like, it's late, I'll buy one tomorrow. And that is just, sometimes you don't get that opportunity back when the market wants to respond like this. But fun move up, like pretty crazy. Legendary, any reflections on Kusho's and Confusion's experience? And then would love to go to Tiro, who I think has been following this as well.
I feel like we've been trained with Nifty Gateway as Europeans in the last bull market, staying up until 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Then the fucking website doesn't work. They have to postpone it for 1 hour, for 1.5 hours. And you stayed up. You stayed up for the first Beeple Mint because you know it did insanely well, and so did many, many others. So I have in my apartment, I have my office basically upstairs. Our bedroom is downstairs. What I just started to do is to set up a sleeping spot for myself upstairs so that I essentially can, go to sleep at like 10 p.m., set an alarm for sometimes it was 3 a.m. in the morning for like 30 minutes before that, so that I can, wake up, have a bit of mental clarity and then try to mint that. And often I had to stay up for like 1.5, 2 more hours because it didn't work. So definitely trained in the art of staying up for late night mints and had perfected the process. But with that being said, with a little sidetracking story, I haven't done it in a long time. I haven't stayed up on purpose or something in quite a long time.
Very, yeah. I mean, this was my point to do with open mints. We're just out of practice. I think this is like a personal reflection. We're not used to being able to get these types of opportunities, right? Like a lot of these mints have been 20x's or 50x's. Like Overworld, for example, if you had the pre-sale at 0.15 and then it goes to more than 2 ETH, what's that? It's at least a 20-ish X, right?
I did 12x.
Yeah. So, it's a significant multiple, but the point is most people never had access to it anyway. So you don't feel like you're missing out on something when you didn't have the opportunity. Whereas in this case, it's a little bit later for us on our side anyway. And on top of that, it was actually open. And then you kind of do feel like you are missing out on something. I'd love for anyone on stage to be able to provide a bit more details on the actual art and the collection. Legendary, you mentioned, art hasn't necessarily been something doing that Solana is renowned for. I know there's exchange art where certain artists have been minting and putting stuff out. Would love to know just a little bit more about this collection, if anyone would be able to share that. Tiro, I believe you've been following this. Maybe you have a bit more information on that. And then Jack, your hand is raised. Would love to come to you just after.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. I'm getting up to speed on it now. I ran a couple spaces at 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. for Rumble Kongs and Crypto Undead last night, so a little tired, a little groggy. I saw this giant rubber mint and trying to get myself educated now. So I'm looking into it now, and the artist is Crypto Pop Punk is his handle on Twitter. I'm looking at his collection. He's got a link tree, and he's got a couple projects that he minted on ETH, which are holding steady at about 0.12. And then he's got a foundation page as well. Looks like the high on his other art pieces, which is all black and white, very intricate, dark tones, almost like people jumping off buildings. Kind of vibes, like scary. It kind of brings me back something that's World Trade Center type of things, and that kind of shook me early in the morning.
Yeah, I've just got that page up now for the people on YouTube, by the way. You mean the foundation ones, like black and white, kind of spooky looking, right?
Yes, very like ghoulish or very serene as far as that is. But yeah, the floor on those are 0.2 ETH currently. So this is out of bounds to have basically have his rubber mint go off at on the Sol network at over 17 floor right now for 1,000 pieces. I don't know what the backing is, who's behind, who's buying all these up. I'm a little hesitant to be a buyer at this price, considering that his other artworks aren't as well known and not as priced as much. So I feel like there may be some influencers that are pumping this bit. I do think the artwork looks pretty cool. As far as the texture on it, it looks like rubber, like tires. The colors are pretty sweet. Some are really busy. Some are a little more easier to handle visually. But I'm not going to be a buyer at this price until I learn more at this point. So what do you guys think about it?
Love it. Thanks so much for that additional information. We're just scrolling through some of his other art. as you say, there's some like darker stuff, a little bit spooky, and then there's some other kind of surreal stuff as well. All very different. I'd say that, like a very eclectic mix of art. And it's a really interesting point that you brought up. Like, if you were to do a comp in terms of like market cap of this 1000 collection, like it's clearly caught on in a way that their other works has not. But my question for you, Legendary, and then we're going to go to Jack based on Tiro's information, is sometimes, have you found, like, do you think sometimes certain collections do better when there are more available so that they can get this type of momentum where like everyone flies in? And it doesn't really matter what they've produced before. If it was just like small collections of 50, like a few one of ones on foundation, and therefore it kind of breaks out of the valuation model, because you actually need something like 1,000 to 10,000 to get this type of momentum, by whether it's influencers or whether it's just genuine collectors, like all minting in this type of rush. Do you think that's actually like good, the fact that there's more in that respect?
If it's good or not, that's a very difficult question to answer, but I definitely think that it needs often a bigger collection for prices to break out like that. I can't really think of any artist in this space who's like on the super successful side of things who hasn't done a bigger collection at some point and has only been doing one of ones, like very, very limited runs, because there is obviously an appeal. I think all of that really started when back in the day open editions became a thing. Then we kind of went away. Like open editions were trending for almost a year, I would say. But then we kind of went away from that. And I do think that it takes something like a couple hundred, 1K, whatever your market size is, whatever your collector base is, for prices to really be able to break out more often, or break out more strongly. Sorry.
That's a really interesting point. Something I'll be thinking about as we throw to Jack is there an artist who consistently sells very high or even reasonably priced one of ones, but doesn't have a bigger collection? I know it was one of Jack Butcher's like one of his big ideas is that like you need to get this stuff out to people and create that velocity sometimes. And like, look, if you spend your whole year and you only put one piece out per month, you've only got 12 collectors. Like, how are you supposed to build up attention and momentum when there's only 12 people who are your core supporters? Whereas when you get out an 1,000-piece collection and you get that velocity and you've got 1,000 people talking about you and supporting you and wanting you to do well, that's going to distribute your message and your aesthetic much faster and quicker than only those 12 people. So I know that is certainly one line of thinking. Would love to think a little bit more on that, to think, is there anyone who is only doing one of ones and consistently doing those well? We've just got NFT Stats up on stage. We'd love to hear his thoughts as well on that in just a second. But first, Jack, your hand's been raised. What are your thoughts on this Rubber collection?
Yeah, it's really interesting to me that, you know, this has ended up on Solana. I think yeah, you need to market yourself as an artist. Like in this space, it is something I look for when I'm collecting. It is actually like, how well can this artist market themselves? It's not all about artistic integrity or like actually the quality of the artwork as much as it should be. And I do think that obviously speaks to what you've just said around, look, if you're going to create like bigger collections, maybe open editions, whatever that might be, and give people entry into that side of the world, absolutely great. I think there's like Derek, who came up on the Punks and the Moonbird side, where he actually took sort of a similar approach, but he marketed himself in the way of, he was doing really small open collections, like, you know, like 60, 50 plus yes, open editions of his photography. Yeah, a great example of someone who like really heavily marketed themselves as a Web3 artist, picked up a punk, really pitched to that community. Then he had his Moonbirds, pitched to that community, and slowly created these much more smaller collections, but still open editions. And he has a Discord and he manages that Discord and he's really active. He gets to events, he markets himself, you know, all those things that you just have to do in this space. And I'm sure you do in the traditional space. It's just my knowledge isn't as heavy in that side. And even when you see open editions sell for thousands in the traditional work, it doesn't seem to be as obvious as it is with NFTs in terms of how many of these are for sale. Like, you really have to speak to the artist, you have to get to know them, and you have to really like get to these galleries and basically quiz the shit out of these people to really get to the granular, like how much of this is available, what are the quantity, what are the sizes, and does that impact the collection as a whole? It seems to be a really different sort of space, and I think it's actually a lot more understandable in this market. And I think getting on Solana only improves that. Final thoughts from me, Legendary, as you were talking about your little bed setup that you now have for the midnight. I don't get how you guys also active in that way, where you know that these mints that are happening at 3 a.m. I think we need to run a space where you guys really talk about like how you do this, like how you have access to it. But for me, I'm literally in the same spot. I'm on a treadmill right now in my office with a fake light simulator called Illumi, whilst literally on my desktop, because I just don't leave this fucking place anymore. And now I have a fucking bed as well. And it's actually a couch, but it makes a good bed. And a Peloton in there, so I don't have to leave. Like, I basically just need some plumbing, and I could just live up in my home office. So yeah, I'm all for it. I just need a bit more alpha on actually what do I need to do. I already have the setup. I just don't have the midnight degeneracy as of yet.
Hey Jack, you're basically drilling a hole in your floor and just using the facilities there. At this point, you've locked yourself in a room to do nothing but watching cryptocurrency and JPEG pictures go up or down.
Yeah, time is not my enemy. Just ability and just general stupidity. So yeah, if I can get on that like horizon, if I can understand it, I have the time and the degeneracy to just live this life and make a ton of money. Unfortunately for me, I'm just not that intelligent. So I have all the time in the world, but none of the intelligence to actually take advantage of it.
You know, it's one of those things where you know how companies, when they need help, like when they need to hire more, they have to undergo this like huge process of like, you know, recruitment and hiring. And by the time it's all done, they actually don't need the help anymore because the demand's gone. It's like that. Like in the moment of time where you were like getting ready to mint, like, you've set up all of the stuff. You set up the Peloton, the plumbing, all the equipment that you need, and it's like shit. There's no mints. There's no mints. I don't know where to get the mints at the moment. So you just need to like reverse engineer it a little bit to get back in the mood. But I mean, you mentioned knowing when the mints are. The important thing is, like, I mean, we miss this as well. Like, and I think that's one of the fun things about the space. Actually, I think it's far more fun, the space. I'm kind of thinking out loud here and just live. It's far more fun when these types of things happen rather than like gated whitelists where people have already bought in, or, you know, everyone knows I'm going to mint this a little bit later and I'm going to do a 10x. Like, yes, that's fun for you as a person who has the whitelist, but that's not fun for the space. Like, I think it's really fun how Kusho was on the space yesterday, went to bed, didn't know what was going to happen, and like just wakes up and he's missed the 20x. Like, that is fun to me. That's taken everyone by surprise, and I think we can enjoy that. I want to throw to Sam here. Sam, welcome to the stage. Great to have you with us again. Two-part question. One, do you agree with this idea that it's more fun when it's kind of like this? And the second question was about supply and demand. Do you think sometimes it's helpful for an artist to have these bigger collections to kind of build up some momentum and drive some price action to a bigger collection where there's a bigger community? I cannot hear you, Sam. I don't know if anyone else can. Legendary, can you hear?
Nope. He is gone. Oh, there he is. Well, maybe. That's something.
Sam, do you want to try again?
Maybe leave the stage and join us again as a speaker.
Yeah, you might want to drop down and come back with us, Sam. We can see the mic going off, and then okay, Legendary first. Reflections on my two-part question. If you were indeed listening because you thought I was going to Sam and maybe you didn't have to listen.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I got saved. Okay. Love it.
Yeah.
We got you back.
I haven't really heard the whole fund conversation because I've like woken up and I'm trying to like clean up my desktop and stuff. But I did hear the whole supply conversation, so I'll talk about that one.
Yes, please.
I once tweeted out that 10,000 was just too much for most PFP projects, and every now and then some of my tweets go mini viral among non-NFT people, and every time that happens, they're all making fun of me as well as NFTs. So in this case, a bunch of like economists and journalists were like, NFT people learn the rules of supply and demand, because I tweeted that 10,000 was too much supply for things to do well. And I thought it was interesting because the economics actually are not that way. Like they're like, if someone were to tweet a PFP project with like 5 of them, it would go nowhere, because a reason that this space does well is because of the virality of having a lot of people out there marketing your stuff. It's like, when I had Jack Butcher on the podcast, on the Proof podcast about a year ago, that was one of the first things he says, like, PFPs are the single best marketing real estate that one could ever imagine. You have a bunch of people basically marketing your product for free. So I think that, I don't think that like 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 is the right number. I think I haven't figured it yet. It's hard to know exactly what is that sweet spot, but you have to put a fair bit out there so you can get that free marketing, so you can get that virality. And I think it's no coincidence that the single biggest market caps are kind of against what I said in the 10,000 space. Even now, still Bored Apes and CryptoPunks are the single biggest market caps across NFTs, by a long shot. So I don't know. I think there is a supply number. It's not. It's certainly not like the lower the better in all cases. I also think like Jack Butcher has put almost too much stuff out there to be super collectible. I think he's been the most interesting, fun person to try. I see Matt down there. He's gonna not like this, but I think he has been the single most interesting, fun person to follow as an artist. But I find you have to be very selective with what you collect from him, because he just has so much stuff out there, and there are only like 3,000 to 5,000 of us, so, and there's only so much ETH that can go into NFTs. I think, and perhaps one could argue that like really helps something like OPEPin 1 edition, where he has all the supply, but he only has 80, first edition OPEPins, and everything else just kind of like the same argument that tons of NFT supply all benefits CryptoPunks, because that's kind of like the core Genesis project, and where the attention starts to flow. But I don't know. It's certainly an interesting question. I think you can do too much, but I also agree with what you're saying, B-Check, that you can do too little as well.
Very, very interesting. Legendary, I want to come to you in just a second, because I saw you laughing when Sam was mentioning The Economist. But one follow-up question first, Sam, is I was speaking to Shripto, who is is a friend and one of the biggest Jack Butcher checks holders, I believe, still. And when speaking about open editions, he said something really interesting, where he said, or his thought or his thesis is that open editions is not the product, it is the distribution. Like when you do those bigger collections, like that is distribution. It's not necessarily a product itself. Like, what do you think about that as a concept?
I mean, I think it's cool. Look, if there were just like 1 or 2 of these things, I'd believe it. But then trademarks come out, then something else comes out. Like there's just so much. Then the prints, like there's just so much. I feel like that's being minted that it's harder to keep track at some level for me. But yeah, I mean, open editions as a way of distributing content, like you have to be careful. Like a year ago was kind of open edition season, and people were making $3 million minting open editions, that would get tens of thousands of people buying in, and all that stuff, everything that minted in that season is basically worthless right now, with the exception of the Jack Butcher stuff. And I think Jack Butcher has been extremely deliberate about keeping things relevant, finding mechanisms to keep them very much ongoing front of mind, and it's kind of like a masterclass he's put on kind of keeping and maintaining relevance of stuff. But the majority of these open editions that were minted a year ago, where the artists raised over millions of dollars. And I think, like, to put in perspective what that means, that's like well above what Sam Spratt made on Monument Game over the summer, which was, I think, by far the biggest kind of like art project of the year at some level by a one-of-one artist. Like Monument Game, I think, got the most positive attention of anything, the most full focus. It was just in a different market. he made 1/3 of what a few of the artists who were doing open editions a year ago were making, and all those things those guys made are worthless now. So so it can. The open editions are interesting when only a few people notice, and then it's over, and then it's like, whoa, like I wish I had gotten one. Holy cow, it's now worth 0.1 free. Like fuck, like that creates interesting narrative, and narrative is what keeps things going. And then add to it that Jack Butcher was like, holy shit, like these checks are becoming traded. I need to, at first, the checks weren't going to be this system where you trade up to, or you burn them all the way to a single check. That was Jack Butcher saying, I have a lot of supply out there, a lot of collectors whose checks are worth a lot more than what was like $8 to mint. Like now I got to figure out how to keep this relevant. And this is cool art. He built that system because he's kind of a genius, So I don't know. I think like, it just all depends on the narrative. It depends a little bit on the supply. It depends on how the artist continues to maintain relevance over time for themselves as well as the project.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. Really, really interesting thoughts there. Very interesting to discuss like these supply and demand mechanics that artists need to try to employ. I think one of the things that happened when those artists were selling so many editions is when they're definitely viewing it not as distribution, but I think it's fair to say many did see just a huge opportunity to sell a lot of product and maximize the amount that they could make in one go. So I think there's a real interesting way that Jack thinks about things and is just far more careful and deliberate, as you say, Sam, with how he kind of sketches the plan out for his distribution and product. Legendary, you were chuckling away when we were talking about some economists. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, no, on the open edition, because I also said that before, I think many people have forgotten how crazy things were. If you think about something like the Bitcoin Angel, Trevor Jones's Bitcoin Angel, which I happily minted back then. That was an open edition, open for 7 minutes, $777, minted 4.1 something K. That was 3.2 mil in 7 minutes. That thing went up to, I don't know, 2K, 3K, a bit more than 3K, I think, even higher at the peak, but I don't want to name a false number. So that was an absolute craze for open editions back then, and nothing really compares to it. I was chuckling when traditional economists try to apply supply demand models into our space, but kind of also forgetting that so many of our NFTs are Veblen goods that just go up in demand once price goes up. On that note, by the way, also Rubber is going up and now currently at 19.5 Sol. On that note of the lower collection sizes, though, what I think drives the virality, where Sam was making a point about that, is if you have that lower collection size in the lower thousands, and then you get a prominent collector coming in, say you get a Dingaling coming in or whomever, and Dingaling sweeps 20, he's not going to say, oh, it's not a 10K collection. So instead of sweeping my usual, say 20, I'm going to sweep only 2 because it's just 1K. Those collectors will typically stick with their like larger sweeps and then suddenly have a higher percentage of the collection. They suddenly will have like, I don't know, 2% if it's a 1K collection. So it is easier to drive that virality, obviously, with lower collections, especially once you have a couple prominent collectors coming in and doing their sweeps. You definitely move the floor faster if the supply is on the lower side of things, as opposed to a 10K collection.
Interesting stuff. Very, very interesting stuff. I think we probably need to pause there because we want to get into the Web3 news and updates to get everyone up to speed with what else has been going on in the Web3 space in the past 24 hours. Before we do that, I'm going to shout out today's sponsor, which is Gondi. Gondi is the premier NFT lending protocol trusted by legendary collectors Seed Phrase, G-Funk, Tony Herrera, Phantom Scribbler, and Mooncat. Today, we showcase Gondi's unique renegotiations feature, which no other NFT lending protocol had implemented before them. Renegotiations allow outstanding loans to be completely reconfigured. Contrary to refinancings, where loans need to be strictly better, renegotiation allows lenders to send offers that might have trade-offs or be worse. This requires the borrowers to accept. Renegotiations are great when a borrower needs to extend a loan, for example, but the value of collateral decreases, so there's a higher risk. In that case, lenders might not want to refinance or simply extend. This is where renegotiation comes into play, where a lender can extend an offer for longer duration but higher APR. For example, Legendary, as a lender in the Gondi ecosystem, are you down for a little renegotiation every now and again?
I haven't done it. Definitely a cool feature to have. Only been on the refinancing side of things, just basically outbidding my fellow lenders with better offers. But if a loan's underwater and I can get better terms, definitely a feature I would like to use, because I think it is cool to have both those options, right? It is cool to be able to outbid essentially your other lenders, but it's also cool to make use of a situation where a loan might be a little bit underwater and you can just get a better deal.
Legendary, the loan shark. Absolutely love it. Very, very accommodating, because I mean, arguably you could say completely no as well, right? In your position, but very accommodating of you. Let's get into the Web3 roundup from the snapshot. As always, pinned up top. Number one, Bitwise Bitcoin ETF becomes the first US Bitcoin ETF to allow anyone to verify its holdings by publishing addresses. This is really cool. I don't think people should take it for granted. They said today the Bitwise Bitcoin ETF becomes the first ETF to publish addresses of its holdings. Now anyone can verify holdings and flows directly on the blockchain. So like real transparency coming to these ETFs. Number two, Tensor announces vision to allow anyone to build a Tensor-sized platform. One of the founders said that the vision for Tensor in 2024 is to allow anyone to build a Tensor-sized platform. We want to unlock a truly open and shared liquidity for all things NFTs on Solana. Let Tensor users become your users. Bootstrap off our liquidity. Tensor will go from 6 devs to 1,000. Interesting stuff from them. Next, AltLayer airdrop claim is live today for EigenLayer restakers and tier stakers, so definitely check that. I need to check mine too. Next, NFT lending platform Gondi announces a 5-year loans are available for Chromie Squiggles. Pretty wild. We saw a 5-year loan available for CryptoPunk yesterday as well. A couple other bits of news. Chimpa's announced a new arcade game featuring multiple NFT communities with prizes. Next, Gala Games sacks a content creator for focusing too much on price action instead of the game. Very pertinent for all of the content creators in the room. Just be aware of the reasons for that. And finally, Frentech releases a haiku about version 2. Money, clubs, points will have a point, custom curves. Legendary, that is the price action. Those are the headlines, and that is the poetry for today. Any thoughts?
I do like the haiku of the day, and I
No,
do
you
like to hear about. No, I do like it because we
No, you
spoke about the custom. We spoke about custom curves and Frentech very, very early on when we had what was his name? Pancake something? That Pancake business person on.
Yes.
That it would be cool to have the custom curves. I do like to see that coming, but I haven't been on Frentech
Yeah,
in
I mean,
months, which is a stupid thing to do because you're missing out on farming points when everyone else is looking elsewhere. That'd be a good opportunity to get points there, but again, can't keep track and can't keep on top of everything at the same time.
yeah, you wanted custom curves, but you didn't want poetry with it, did you?
I'm not opposed to a haiku. That would I don't know. Okay, very very quick side story because we have to cover the token extensions on Solana as well. I joined one Discord. I think it was Yoga Pets back then, yeah. And my first 3 messages were all haikai. It wasn't by intention, and we had the haiku bot, and every message was like, "Oh, beautiful haiku, beautiful haiku." I was like, "Damn, I'm not making this on purpose."
Did you have to write a haiku to get in?
No, it wasn't. It was random. Like it happened that all my 3 messages just were haikai. By the way, I structured those sentences.
I've never heard the plural version of a haiku. I did not know that it was haikai, and I don't know if you're just making that up.
No, that's the correct Japanese one. I love to flex plural forms. That's the correct plural form, actually.
I'm not saying haikai. It's haikus, plural for me. Let's check that as we go into it. But you mentioned the Solana tokenization. No, Solana
token extensions.
Token extensions. So why don't you break that down for the listeners? Funky, I see you with your hand raised. We'll get to you in just a moment. Legendary, take it away.
Yeah, look, if we break those token extensions down at a very, very simple level, what it means is that tokens become smarter. They get things like metadata, etc., attached natively to them. So you can do things with tokens that you would have otherwise needed a smart contract for on ETH, if we stick to the ETH thinking logic. And with those token extensions on Solana, there's just a couple things that you can now natively do and use as features, such as transfer fees. You can, well, charge a fee every time a token is transferred. You can have transfer hooks. You can have confidential transfers, which are pretty cool, which means you can share the token type, source, and destination, but in that transaction, it's not disclosed how many units of the token have been transferred to the public, typical zero knowledge proof thingy. You can obviously have non-transferability, where only the issuer of the token can control if a token is transferred, whether you want to use that, I don't know, for like a demo access for something or for user identification. So all those things are per se not new features. It's not something that we've never heard of before in terms of it being done on the blockchain, but it's now integrated or being integrated as a set of features that's just natively available for protocols who want to use that, whether that's for stable coins, whether that's for real world assets or other things.
Very interesting stuff. Because I want to touch on the ETH ETF delay just for a moment, and Funky has his hand raised, I think we'll probably leave that there. Obviously, you can read more by going to the snapshot and clicking through to the relevant place. Funky, your hand is raised. What are your thoughts?
Just a general comment. I think that we have what's now called the modern market effect. I know correlation is not causation and all that, but it seems like whether it was the flappening or now the rubber thing, we start talking about stuff on the show and it starts pumping. Have you guys not noticed this? So anyhow, great job. Keep it up. Amazing.
I thought the flappening was the top. Definitely the tweet where I said that no NFTs exist between 10 and 20. That was
no, it was not the flappening. It was your excursion into how much does it cost? What does it take to buy an actual real life penguin?
Oh, yes,
that kind of fantasizing marked the top. Just want to be precise on that.
Yeah, that was the top actually. Very affordable though, real penguins. Just a quick side note. Right, let's get into the final bit of news. We don't have very long, Legendary. So do you want to just hit the main piece of news? I'm going to share the article for people who are watching on YouTube. Quick TLDR.
Absolutely. On the note of the ETF spot, on the ETH spot ETF decision, finally managed to get that one out. Has been delayed. I think it was expected. Also, if you looked at like the on-chain betting markets, that it's not gonna get approved just now. And for now, it has been postponed to, what was it? To May 23rd.
Yeah, so it seems like this James Seifert, who I believe is from Bloomberg, he seems to be following all the stuff pretty closely. He says spot Ethereum ETF delays will continue to happen sporadically over the next few months. Next date that matters is May the 23rd. This was largely expected because the SEC also delayed decisions on Fidelity's proposed fund on January the 18th, which was a week ago. So obviously different people, different parties have proposed their own ETFs, and I guess different people will get delayed just like on a rolling basis moving forward. Quick follow-up question though, Legendary, is we obviously saw a big run up on Bitcoin in advance of its ETF. And then on the day it went up a little bit, but ETH went up much further. Any instinctive thoughts right now, like planning forward for the ETH ETF moment? Do you think the same things happen? Does something else go up instead of ETH when we actually get to that moment?
Yeah, that's the question, right? If the BTC ETF pumped ETH, which coin will the ETH ETF pump, which is the next one to be rumored to get its own spot ETF? It depends on the timing. It depends on also what the Bitcoin ETF is going to do until then. I think we have seen amazing inflow in the BTC ETFs, but we've also seen the selling pressure in GBTC caused by FTX also selling off their like almost $1 billion or around $1 billion in BTC. So it's very, very, difficult to make a statement on that, considering all those factors. But in isolation, obviously, I do think it's a very, very positive news, and I do think we will get those approvals in a couple of months or maybe a bit more longer than that. I don't know what the final date, what the final extension is, but absolutely a very, very bullish and positive sentiment.
Interesting stuff. And you're right to point out that this GBTC story was something which I don't think ETH will necessarily have to deal with. Obviously, we need to do a lot more research on that. And I know that I think it was Celsius as part of their bankruptcy proceedings that have been selling a lot of ETH, all like just loads up to this point already. Like they've been dumping loads of ETH as part of their proceedings. Like definitely want to check that. Look, out of all these people that keep going bankrupt, is anyone else going to be dumping it as a consequence towards that date? Is there anyone doing that in advance? Will that all be out of the way by that time? I think those are the things you want to be looking for, because the GBTC selling has really dampened the kind of positivity around all of the Bitcoin inflows, which I think are very, very positive ultimately. And that's been the general consensus on the timeline too. But thank you for that, Legendary. Thank you so much for co-hosting. We have run out of time for today's show. Just another shout out to our sponsor, Gondi, for today, the premier NFT lending protocol. If you're interested, follow at Gondi XYZ and head to their website or jump in their Discord to learn more. Thank you so much for hosting, Legendary. Thank you to our contributors, Sam, NFT Stats, Kalano, Jack, Funky, and Kusho. We hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back again tomorrow to finish the week in style. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.